Huge news out of Manhattan on Friday as Dylan Edwards is hitting the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Welcome back to my everydayers. We got a huge reaction for you today on this Friday afternoon. Wasn't planning on putting out a second football episode for you today, but we had to. We had to go on the airwaves here and talk about it. Dylan Edwards is going to officially redshirt for the rest of the season. He's at that 4-game mark. It felt like it was going to happen. But most importantly, it has also been reported that he will enter the transfer portal. It sounds like his days in K-State are over. Now, it's not 100%. We saw it happen with the basketball team. CJ Jones hit the portal. He came back, but different circumstances. I have a good feeling that we have seen the very last of Dylan Edwards in a Kansas State uniform. It's unfortunate that it didn't work out. This will now be his second time hitting the transfer portal. He came to Kansas State via the portal after starting his college career in Colorado. And I thought at the beginning of this season that Dylan Edwards was going to be the person that made this offense hum. And I think the coaching staff also did as well. After his injury in Iowa State, week 0, in Dublin, Ireland, I should say, against Iowa State, right off the bat. Didn't even get an offensive snap before he was injured. It happened on the punt return. I know there's some rumors saying that it happened maybe on the sidelines with benches, kicking a bench or something like that. I don't have those reports. I don't have any way to confirm that. So we're going off what we know, and it's an injury on the field. And I will say that since that moment has happened, we have had this entire process for week in and week out of, will Dylan play? Will he not play? And will the offense be able to hum without him? Because in the Iowa State game, they focused and talked about it the entire post game so much about how it really impacted them not having Dylan Edwards on the field. So, of course, not having an electric player like him who broke out in the bowl game at the final game of the season last year against Rutgers, tore it apart, and then the week 0 right after that just kind of falls into shambles and doesn't get himself on the field. Injuries suck. There's no doubt about that. I think there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes as well. Again, cannot give you too much on that because I don't know, but just, of course, with some of the reports that we are hearing and the rumor mills, of course, that never ends, I think that maybe there's a little bit more happening behind that. There was a report and a rumor that happened a few weeks ago, if you remember on social media, we talked about on this channel, where his agent blatantly came out and said he does not plan on entering or going and redshirting, and he does not plan on entering the transfer portal, trying to limit those rumors at one point. And then, of course, things change, and now we're getting those reports. That was by On3. Pete Nakos reported that earlier today about Dylan Edwards hitting the transfer portal. So what does that mean for Kansas State? Well, that's a good question. Obviously, Joe Jackson's going to lead the charge the rest of the way. Maybe that's the surge that this offense needs, knowing that it's not the possibility of somebody returning and taking your job and being that running back one. Maybe that's exactly what this running back room needs. Maybe they go 3-0 to finish off the season because maybe that was an issue in the locker room. Maybe there was some problems and they have to find a way to just move on from that. And that's why they're deciding to do it on the bye week. I'm not quite sure. Or maybe it truly is an injury with his foot. There was a lot of imagery reports that came back. Chris Kleiman discussed that there were some foot injuries going on. And maybe they just found out that it is going to redshirt, and he thinks it's just better off that he goes elsewhere to finish his college career. Either way, I wish Dylan Edwards luck. I don't see it happening with him coming back to Kansas State. If I'm being completely honest, I just don't see that working out. And the way that this direction of this program is going, I think Dylan Edwards is going to look elsewhere to finish off his college season. So hitting the transfer portal is huge. Where do I think he lands? Well, I mean, he's an electric player. When he's 100% on the field, he's one of the best running backs in the country, let alone the Big 12. We saw what happened when he was healthy, or at least it felt like he was healthy against UCF. And then, of course, what he was in the bowl game against Rutgers. That's really the only 2 times that we've got to get a full taste of Dylan Edwards as the running back for K-State. And we've been talking about what we could get from him way more than just those 2 games. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise for K-State, because you finally just get a solid answer about the future of this running back position. And that's something that you're going to have to live with. And with the fact that the recruiting window is National Signing Day is less than a month away, you do have a couple running backs in your recruiting class already. And then, of course, with the transfer portal only being one 10-day period in January this year, he plans to enter. He's not entering it now, for the record. Dylan Edwards plans to enter the transfer portal. Also saw a report that he is no longer with the team, which usually when you do make that report, you usually aren't with the team anymore. So I'm sure we won't see Dylan Edwards any longer, but that gives you more of an idea and more a plan to research and get ready to say, we need to find a replacement for Dylan Edwards for next season, because retention was a huge thing last year, folks. Retention was a big thing for Kansas State after having a down year, which they felt last year was a down year. It's worse this year, but they still found a way to get retention last year. Avery stayed, Jace Brown stayed, and who we're talking about today, Dylan Edwards, stuck around. There was rumors, plenty of rumors, that many thought that they would hit the portal last year, especially a guy like Jace Brown, who right up until the end of the season, right, days before the bowl game against Rutgers, there was speculation that he was not going to play and hit the portal. That never happened. But now we are seeing Dylan Edwards at the portal. His injury obviously helps him make that decision earlier because he's going to redshirt. He doesn't lose a year of eligibility for the season he played in this year for Kansas State. And then we'll see what happens for the rest. That's going to be a huge issue, in my opinion, for Kansas State. What that means for the retention of the offense, especially heading into the new year. And I'm looking right at Avery Johnson. I'm looking at Jace Brown, and I'm looking at Lincoln Cure. Could Dylan Edwards be the sign of things to come for Kansas State? And is it a dark, dark path this offseason? I think we should speculate a little bit and talk about it next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game and want to ride that hot hand, well, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And right now, check this out, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet hits. That's right. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up right now. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, now the #1 sports podcast network. Feels good. Everydayers, welcome on back into the show. If you're listening for the first time, hit that subscribe button, bringing you Wildcat coverage like nobody else, your team every day. And we're talking Dylan Edwards hitting the transfer portal soon. It's going to happen in January, but his intentions to hit the transfer portal, he will medically redshirt, or I guess just redshirt medically, I think is probably a different term. But he will redshirt for the rest of the season. This year will not count as any eligibility. He only played 4 games, and that is the limit. So this year will not affect him at all in the eyes of college football. So what we got from him last year in the Rutgers game, and then, of course, you know, the fun things we had in the UCF game was great. Getting Dylan Edwards in UCF was awesome, what he did in that. To round out Dylan Edwards' Kansas State career, last year he had 74 carries for 546 yards. He averaged just under 7.5 yards per carry and had 5 touchdowns. He also picked up 133 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns as well. And of course, we have to talk about that amazing bowl game he had last season for Kansas State against Rutgers, where he had 18 carries for 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then also had 2 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. He was electric. I mean, that was his coming out game. That was the thought process to really say, okay, he's the running back of the future. He's the guy that's going to take it. And he proved that in the bowl game last year. He changed probably the entire direction of what Kansas State was going to do in the portal last year, all because of December 26th last year against Rutgers. Now you have to change direction again, but in a different kind of context. Now you don't have a Dylan Edwards. Now you have 3 weeks for the rest of the season, 3 games left in the rest of the season, about a month left. Maybe a bowl game if you can get the 6 wins, and then you prepare for your recruiting window. And of course, your National Signing Day that comes at December 3rd, and then the transfer portal that hits in January. And then we start all over again. Inside of that, I know we talk secondary all the time. I know we talk about trying to find other things. Running back's going to have to be a primary focus. Joe Jackson has shown that he can improve, but I don't know if he's your answer as a running back one for the foreseeable future. I don't know. And who knows if other people decide to hit the portal as well. That's what I want to get to next, a little bit of a speculation, if you will. What does that mean for Kansas State? Does that mean that this is starting to open the door, right? We saw a commitment flip. We talked about it on the episode earlier today, one leaving for Kansas State to Arizona. And then now we're seeing a star player on the roster hit the transfer portal and deciding to most likely leave at the beginning of next year. What does that mean for Avery Johnson? What does that mean for Jace Brown? What does that mean for Lincoln Cure? Those are the really three pieces that I pay attention to the most on this offense. Of course, there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of criticism about this offense this year, mainly because of the play calling on Matt Wells, the way that they've played the game. Of course, having 5 turnovers last week against Texas Tech doesn't help in recency biased type of conversation. And then, of course, if you want to just go as a season as a whole, losing week 0 to Iowa State and then losing to Army, losing to Arizona, those type of games, your heartbreaking loss to Baylor, putting yourself in a situation where you should be 10-2, at least had the expectations of being a 10-2 team. And now you're fighting your way to be bowl eligible by the end of the season. Of course, it's going to put some question marks and maybe point some fingers towards the star players on this offense. And I do think that we're going to see some players hit the portal this year. I'm a little nervous that retention principle, that retention tactic that Chris Kleiman tried to push last year will not work again the second time around. And I'm sure it's going to happen on the defense as well. But the 3 names that come to mind, of course, are the 3 offensive stars left here with Avery Johnson, Jace Brown, and of course, the number 1 recruit in the state of Kansas from this class in Lincoln Cure, the tight end, who, I remind you, just a few days before National Signing Day last year was about to sign with Oregon and then decided to go to Kansas State. Could he hit the portal and then decide to maybe make a move? Could Jace Brown, if he decides not to go into the NFL draft, because I think out of all these 3 players, Jace Brown actually has what it takes to go into the NFL draft, become a mid-round pick right now, and actually perform at the NFL level? Or does he go one more year and find himself somewhere else, hit the portal if he doesn't want to stick around the Kansas State? And then, of course, Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson is the biggest name that really I think will be the domino, the waterfall, whatever effect you want to talk about, whatever type of term that you want to put it at. But there was rumors where when Tennessee needed a quarterback this offseason, Avery Johnson's name popped up right away. When there was other names that were swirling around the potential of a quarterback needed, Avery Johnson's name constantly came into the rumors with him possibly leaving K-State. He stuck around this year. He was a big reason, I think, for the retention model actually working for Chris Kleiman last year. Does it happen again? And if it doesn't happen again, what does that mean for the direction of Kansas State in the near future? And what does that mean for the coaching staff as a whole in the near future? A lot of stuff to talk about, and this is where it just gets started right here. This Dylan Edwards news about him redshirting and hitting the transfer portal, tip of the iceberg, folks. The absolute tip of the iceberg. And we're going to have you covered right here on all of it. I think this could be, I'm going to be frank with you. I think this news right here could either be catastrophic or it could be absolutely nothing. It could be catastrophic, meaning that this is just signs of what's to come. And then we're going to see a max exodus this offseason because of the downplay, the fact that maybe if they don't get to a bowl game, or even if they do, even if they go 7-5, if they win out the year, that's still worse than it was last year, the year before. It will be the worst season. We are, no matter what, in the worst season for Chris Kleiman since the COVID year. So what does that mean for some of these star players? Could it be a max exodus where they have to completely rebuild in a year in a league that this Big 12 conference does not take very lightly to teams that are trying to rebuild? I mean, this is a dog-eat-dog conference, or is it absolutely nothing? Is it the fact that they kind of already knew this was happening? There's been multiple team meetings knowing that this was a case where Dylan Edwards, maybe because he's been out for so long, that this was already a speculation. They've already had these conversations with these offensive stars, and I'm focusing on the offense because Dylan Edwards obviously is a running back, and he's a star weapon there, and of course you have to have that type of chemistry. He's also a player that was with the state of Kansas. That's why Lincoln Cure comes into consideration as well, not only because of the fact that he almost went to Oregon and played for the Ducks to start off his collegiate career. But what does that mean? Maybe it means absolutely nothing, but I don't know if that's the case. And of course, we're going to talk more about that throughout the entire rest of the season, heading into the offseason. When we get the news about the portals, when new players come in, we'll, of course, have you covered right here on Locked On Kansas State. So drop it in the comments. What are your thoughts about Dylan Edwards redshirting and hitting the transfer portal? This is huge news. This is absolutely huge news. We had to talk about it. I'm going to go out and say that I think it's a bigger deal than some people are talking about. I think it's a big, big deal here, and I think it's just a tip of the iceberg. Let me know. Maybe talk me at the ledge if you have to in the comments below. If you're listening on audio, I appreciate it so much. We'll be back here tomorrow to do some reaction shows. We got some basketball games coming up on Saturday. Although Kansas State's football is on an off week, the basketball teams, both men and women's, are in action on Saturday. All right, please like the video. Please subscribe, and we'll see you back here next time right here on Locked On Kansas State.